Alright guys, MikeCoco back here with the Mythic Season Hero selection from the arc. I finally picked both arcs up, and with the introduction of this latest patch which allows you to get soul gems, and with the introduction of Abyssal Inferno, free players actually have access to some of the costumes from previous months, and it means that certain heroes actually become viable again. So I do want to go over that list. I think we just got the last arc recently, like a month or two ago. So if you didn't pick it up, great. If you're waiting for my video to see which one you should pick, I thank you for your patience. Um, Seriously, like you guys waiting for my opinion, someone just on the internet, it means a lot. But if you still have it and you haven't picked anything up, um, I'm gonna go through like the tier list again, with the idea that you have the ability to select one more costume from both the Saint Ione event, and also because if you manage to clear up to tower floor 15, you get enough mythic essence to pick another costume because of the new soul gem rewards. So let's take a look at the current mythic selection. So if you followed my first guide, which was I think picking up Michael, and the second guide I believe I recommended Gabriel and DQK, and I put Remy very low on the list. And at that time, at that point of the game, that meta really didn't focus too much on Remy. She really wasn't needed, and I still stand by that opinion if we were back in that meta and Abyssal Inferno hadn't been introduced. However, because Abyssal Inferno has been introduced, and we're not at a state of the game where we have myth skills on our mains, the ability to provide Dispel and Cleanse for 2 turns is absolutely critical for Abyssal Inferno. Which is why Remy shoots way back up on the tier list for picking up Mythic Heroes. So for PvE, if you already had, so I'm assuming you follow the guide and you have Michael from your first one. Now the second tier, now instead of number rankings, I think I'm going to go with tier this time because it makes a little bit more sense. So for tier, because it depends on which hero you selected for your second box. So tier 2, I would put DQK, Gabriel, and Remy. The reason why, DQK with a costume, and because the costume is now available, I'm going to be considering all of this with costume, because that's what you should be aiming for. I know some of the mid-level players won't have access to it yet, but ideally you will work up to that level where you can get to Tower Floor 15 and get those costumes. So with costumes, DQK, her skill damage boosts I think like 3.5 times. So this is my DQK right now. It does the 10 million delayed dot. Once the costume is applied, not only does it become non-removable, but it increases by I think around 3.5 times in damage. A lot of players, they don't know this, or they just assume that, or they only know that it's non-dispellable, but that's not really the important part. The important part of the costume is that the dot actually becomes much more powerful with the costume, which could be fairly useful in Abyssal Inferno, from what I've seen in Kalo. It is fairly useful because for heroes or for bosses that somehow have cleanse, like floor on the teens floor, the delayed dot does go through. So DQK, obviously a very good pick. Gabriel, another good pick, because if you're running Claire, Claire naturally has fairly weak damage because she has no attack boost. Most players use her for the grudge ability and because she's also a Fury Thief. But oftentimes if you run Claire, you may be missing out on a damage dealer, which is a perfect reason to sub in Gabriel, because he kind of kills 2 birds with 1 stone. And I think I mentioned this in my previous arc box. He's essentially a Lacita and Claire kind of mashed together. And for single target, for a multi-target Fury Thief with his Fury reduction to 100 Fury, his Fury return is actually not that bad. It's still not as great as a single target Fury Thief, but it kind of gets the job done better than someone like Claire. So that's why Gabe is up there, because a lot of people tend to use the grudge ability, which is pretty useful. And with the fact that we can now get Husky with the soul gems, having those two and starting with I think like 700 Fury, it could change quite a bit in terms of Abyssal Inferno and also Explore. And last one is gonna be Remy in tier 2. This pretty much cleans up tier 2, and I guess Kamau would also, but Kamao's more like PvE only based. while the other heroes are still fairly, like DQK, Gabe, and Remy are still fairly useful in PvP as well. They're not only PvP or PvE specific. So Remy closes out tier 2. The reason why is because in Abyssal Inferno you have the ability to select 5 heroes, and at this point in floor 18, you need a bunch of things if you're not, extremely powerful and can't just like 2-turn or 3-turn kill the boss. You need the ability to cleanse because Demetra has a permanent silence. You need the ability to dispel to get rid of the cleanse on the boss, otherwise the healing debuff will not stack. You need a healing debuffer. You need a shielder, and you possibly may need a Fury Thief. Excuse me, depending on how much Fury, you're running. And that's a lot of things to handle. That's like, I think 5 properties or 6 properties to handle, and you only have 5 heroes. And you also cannot use any spear heroes. So you're extremely limited, and you can't just throw in people to provide only one functionality. And that's the reason why Ione doesn't work on that floor, is because, sure, she provides the cleanse, but she doesn't provide the dispel. So you need to bring in another hero to dispel. And currently for free to play, there aren't any really good dispellers. You have Kunoichi, but she's not good for PvE. And that's pretty much it. That's like the only dispeller I can think of off the top of my head that's fairly decent in terms of stats. And that's why Remy comes in. She does the heal, she does the cleanse, she does the spell. All 3 at once. And the spell is actually what is important. Because not too much has changed from the last time I made the Arc box. It's just that the spell has become far more significant, so that Ione is kind of outclassed at this point. And also because in Abyssal Inferno you have restrictions on your weapons anyway. So from what I'm thinking right now, it's very good to have kind of like a clone or a duplicate that provides a similar function but uses a different weapon type. So in the floors where Remy is like Tome, I think, where floors with Tome are restricted, bring in Ione. If Ione is restricted, bring Remy, something like that. Similarly with Gabe, those are the heroes with Grudge. You have Sarissa, Claire, Gabe, they're all gun users. You pick up Husky, you have another alternate to start with Grudge. Things like that. You kind of get the point. You have like an alternate hero that can kind of take the place in case there is a weapon restriction in place. So that closes out tier 2. Tier 2.5, because I think there's a pretty significant gap between the third tier and tier 2. Tier 2.5, Saint Ione, what's her face? Kamal and Taihu. And the reason why is because Saint Ione is okay for PvE. She does provide a pretty good crit damage boost and a attack boost. But if you're running Christine with costume, you're gonna get crit anyway, and the attack boost is debatable if it's outclassed by another hero. Like you could bring another hero that provides a greater attack boost. Same thing with critical damage. But she is extremely good in arena PvP modes because the heal is just very annoying to deal with. So that's why she's in tier 2.5. Kamal, similar to Saint Ione, except in the PvE role, she's not that great for PvP, but for PvE she's an absolute monster. And again, Taihu, for PvE, not that great. PvP, again, a very big monster there. So that's why these 3 heroes, they're very good at what they do, but they're only good at doing one thing. So that's why they're at tier 2.5. The next tier is going to be tier 3, which is going to comprise of Rag, Sarah, and yeah, that's pretty much it. Those 2 will be in their same tier. Reason why, Rag, I think he got kind of nerfed because he got a 300, his Fury cost increased to 300. So he does deal more damage, but he's now much more specific to PvE because you don't want to be using 300 Fury in arena. It's just not good. And yeah, that's pretty much the only reason why he's down there. And compared to Kamal, Kamal outdamages Reg anyway in terms of PvE, so there's really no point in using or in preferring Reg over Kamal. And Sarah, she's okay she's decent in PvP and PvE. She has decent damage in both, but she doesn't excel too much in either. And again, she is 300 Fury, so and also fairly squishy considering she's a magic hero. So kind of actually a contrast. Decent in both, but not particularly great in PvE and PvP, and certainly not as great in both categories compared to DQK, Gabe, or Remy. So yeah, those two clear out tier 3, and unfortunately Uriel is he's gonna stay here for a while. I honestly don't see anybody using him in PvP, and I don't see a lot of people using him in PvE either from what I hear. So that's pretty much why he's in his own little tier. I did forget Metatron and Rag. Rag as well doesn't deal that much damage. She's like a support hero because of the attack increase is not that great. Critical hit is also not, it's like okay. And her myth skill is also decent, to say the least. I think it's like, what is it? I think they changed it to like weapon activation and critical damage. I don't remember exactly. Let me check real quick. Where is Raphael? It's, yeah, increases weapon activation chance and increases critical damage. So again, more like a support hero, doesn't do too well as a standalone. Metatron, okay, I've seen a lot of people saying cannons are good, and I don't disagree. Cannons are good, but you need the support for cannons, which means you need things like Poki's costume. You might need stuff like, I don't know who else has cannon support. Essentially, if you're missing cannon support already, Metatron is extremely hard to work with, because you definitely need the cannon support in order to use her effectively, and a lot of attack boost because she doesn't provide her own attack boost. So I don't think that cannons are underrated in this meta. It's just that they're far too expensive to build, and to build optimally in this meta right now. In the future, from what I've heard in the Korean version of the game, cannons get a huge buff. So if you do want to go to cannons, I highly advise you start building now. And if you do want to take the route of cannons, you should plan very wisely what your next choices will be. And I think that's it for the Mythic seasons. So to recap, Tier 1, Michael, he's in his own tier because he's just that good. He's pretty much been carrying me throughout the entire game. The only point where I got stuck was Abyssal Inferno. I think like a few weeks ago I cleared floor 8 completely, made it to Immortal with just Michael. So that's just how good he is, which is why he's in Tier 1. Tier 2, DQK, Gabe, Remy. Depends on what you want. With the 2 arc boxes, I would definitely select 2 of the 3 of these heroes because they're going to be useful. I picked DQK and Remy because Claire gets a decent costume-ish in the future. And I don't have that many gun heroes to begin with. I have a much more melee-specific team, which is why I went with DQK instead of Gabe. Remy, like I said before, at this point in the game, I think she's absolutely critical to clear floor 18. Because you need the ability to cleanse and dispel and heal all within the same hero. You don't want to spread them out within multiple heroes because you just don't have that many heroes to use and to SOS and to revive. Tier 2.5, you have the specific category heroes, Taihu, Kamal, Saint Ione. They're good at only one specific thing and okay, maybe decent-ish at the other modes. Tier 3 is where you have Sarah and Rag. They're pretty much outclassed at this point. They were like one of the first Mythic season heroes and they're just outclassed. And the last tier is the never used, never seen tier. Raphael, Uriel, and Metatron. So that's pretty much it for the arc box. I know it's really late, but it might be a blessing in disguise considering all the changes we had. If I made this video maybe like when we actually got the arc box, which is like a month or 2 months ago, the tiers would definitely be different. I would not have put Gabe that high because Gabe without a costume is pretty much a glorified Claire. He's not good at all, but with a costume he does look a lot more promising. So it is sort of a blessing in disguise. I do apologize for being so late on it. It's just that with school ending and I had like a week break and then I had to go to work actually full time, so I didn't get a lot of time to like prep to, you know, think about these things. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this video. Next video, promise, Abyssal Inferno. I'm working on it. I think what I'm gonna do at this point is gonna release all the teens video, or where I started recording the teens video, which is after floor 15. Leave in the comments for that video if you think that it should be like grouped by specific floors. Like I'll do a short video for 15, 16, 17, 18 versus having them all grouped up in a compilation or something like that. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this video, guys. Peace.